Okay, recording now. All right. So, so Tom Driscoll graduated from East Tennessee State University in 1976 with a BS in environmental health. He worked for the state of Texas Air Pollution Control for 10 years, and with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for 27 years. Although he has been enjoying the outdoors and nature all his life, he has been bird watching since 1982 and has seen over 4,800 species of birds in the world. That is a lot, 4,800 species. Tom and Antonia Brown will be presenting on the birds of the Eno River and their importance. They will identify some of the birds you can find at the Eno and chat about birding techniques to make sure you're spotting everything around you. For the record, I just wanted to read Antonia Brown's intro. She works at the AmeriCorps as an environmental educator with the Eno River Association, and she is originally from Minnesota, graduated with a degree in ecology from Rice University in Houston, Texas in 2019. She discovered her love of the outdoors through her experiences in college, and she is passionate about all people feeling a connection to the natural world. So let's welcome them. Give them a welcome. Thank you so much, Antonia and Tom, for being here. Appreciate you being here, and just take it away.
Yeah, thanks so much. We're really excited. I'll share my screen and we can get started with our presentation. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be doing a presentation today on the birds of the Eno River, and I'm Antonia and Tom is here as well, and we'll do a little more intro about our organization in a second, but we're really excited to chat with y'all and engage with y'all about birds of the Eno and birds just kind of all around you. You can find a lot of these birds just not at the Eno, just like out and about. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to identify some birds. We're going to talk about some histories of the birds and listen to some of their calls. So we can jump right in. Oh, can we? Okay, there we go.
Hi, all. Again, I'm Tom Driscoll. You can call me Tom. Before we do our commercial breaks, Antonio and I are going to do commercial breaks about our organizations. How many of you have been on a bird walk or a nature walk before? Raise your hands. Oh, some of you I can't see, but anyway, raise your hand. Karen has, and some others. Very good. How many people have been to the Eno River, one of their parks or one of their trails? Okay, Alexandra has, and some others have. But Alexandra, maybe you can work with Antonio and I to get some more people out on the Eno River and maybe do a bird walk or a nature walk sometime soon.
That would be amazing. Looking forward to it.
Okay, let's, Antonio and I will talk with you about that later. And maybe Gail Boyarsky from New Hope Audubon is also on the meetings, and she the education department, and maybe she can help as well. All right, so we're the New Hope Audubon Society. We're the local Audubon Society for Durham, Chatham, and Orange counties. And we do a lot of stuff for nature and the environment. We're advocates for nature and the environment. So we go to libraries and do presentations. You can see me, unfortunately, here in the dark, doing a presentation at an elementary school in Durham. We built an eagle viewing platform out at Jordan Lake so people can see the eagles and the ospreys and the birds. We have a program where my wife and others, they go out and look at your yards to try to encourage people to plant native plants. We go to festivals like this is at Sandy Creek Park, which is in Durham, but we also go to the Eno River Festival, and we do other educational programs. So if you're interested at all in becoming involved with what we're doing, or you want to learn more, our website is right there. Okay, Antonia.
Great. So yes, so I'm Antonia and I work at the Eno River Association. And what the Eno River Association is we're a nonprofit, and we really work to protect the Eno and also share the information that we know about the Eno with everyone around us. And we do that through three main ways: with stewardship, education outreach, which is where I work, and marketing. So in education and outreach, what we do is we do programs like this, like all the time. Like we're doing presentations with groups, we're leading walks at the Eno. If you look at like the bottom photo, you can see some students hauling some gravel, and that was a program I did where we were building up a trail so it wouldn't like slide into the Eno. So we do a lot of things like that where we're doing trail maintenance. And then in the other photo, you can see a woman searching for frogs, and that was a program I led where we were doing a reptile and amphibian safari. So we went out to the Eno to search for reptiles and amphibians and learn about how cool they are and like slimy they are. So we do a lot of programs with students and with adults to just allow everyone space to feel a connection to the earth and feel a connection to one another and a connection to the Eno too. And that's what we're really hoping to do today, to give y'all some tools to feel more connected to the birds around you and help identify some of those birds too. So we'll jump into the birds now.
Okay, real quick. Okay, back.
Okay, go ahead. Wait, hold on. Okay, go.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about field marks. What did you just see? Anybody, let me know what you just saw. Show it again, please, Antonia.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody have an idea about this bird? Okay, Faye Garrett said it's a cardinal. Okay, so very, very good. It is a cardinal. So Faye, how did you know it was a cardinal? Oh, there's a lot of chats here. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so Faye might have decided it was a cardinal because it's a red bird, but we're going to talk today a little bit about field marks, and field marks are the clues that the birds on the bird's plumage or their activities or their what they're feeding on. That gives you clues to identify birds. So this is a cardinal. It's all red. It's got a black forehead and a black chin. It's got a big honking orange beak. And you can see why it has that big beak, because it crushes open sunflower seeds. It's also got a crest. But the crest is down while he's not being aggressive, or he's not defending his territory or calling for a mate. Okay. So we just saw a cardinal, and it was a red bird. Is this a cardinal? Anyone? No. Emily Mackenzie, no. Very good. So Mackenzie and Emily, how did you know this wasn't a cardinal? And LaPrecious as well. Very good. So how did everyone know this wasn't a cardinal? What's different about this bird than the cardinal we just saw? Very good. Very good, Mackenzie. Right. So Mackenzie and Jaden pointed out that this bird doesn't have a crest, and it doesn't have a black forehead. Is the beak different? Yes, the beak is very different. So this bird is a male summer tanager, and it lives in our area only in the summer. So it spends the winter in Central and South America, but it comes here in the summer to breed. And whereas the cardinal had a big honking orange beak, this beak is thinner, and so this bird only eats fruits and sometimes insects. So it doesn't eat very many seeds because the beak isn't built that way. So the field marks for the summer tanager, go to the next slide, please, Antonia. So you can compare them now, and you can see, first off, we learned that all red birds aren't cardinals here. Cardinals are here all year round. They're very common. And so one might think that because it's also the state bird of North Carolina, one might think all red birds are cardinals. But we just learned that no, that's not the case. So who knows what this bird is? Anyone know what this bird is? Okay. Joel said Joel said cardinal maybe, and that's right, Joel. And why would you think this might be a cardinal? Oh, Emily, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Emily, the female one. So Emily's right. This is a female cardinal. So you can see it's got the same big honking orange bill. It's got a crest, but it's really drab. It's very, very drab. So why is the female not like the male? Why is it so drab? Does anyone know? Okay, so the females are drabber because they sit on the nest, and when they're on the nest, they're vulnerable to predators. So they want to make sure they can blend in with the nest as much as they can, so they're not vulnerable to the predators. So the predators can't see them, and they're very, very still when they're on the nest. So they can't hear them as well. Meanwhile, the males get to look all fancy and colorful and they strut around and they sing a lot to try to attract females. But it's the female that gets to choose the male. So she wants to lay her eggs with the male that sounds the best, looks the best. So she's very picky. So the females get to pick the males in this case. And in many cases in the bird world, the female picks the male.
Okay, so Tom just did a wonderful job telling us about how to distinguish cardinals from other birds, or male and female cardinals. And that's wonderful to know, but you don't have to just stop there with identifying birds. You can, or any animal for that matter. You can go on and also learn about the cultural history, or like the myths and legends that go along with that animal. So I bet maybe you know some story like why turtles have their shell, or maybe you know some like other story of why frogs jump so high. And those are really interesting stories that we also like to share about when we're learning about new animals or new plants. So here's a tale about why male cardinals are red, and it comes from the Occaneechi Tribe, which is a North Carolina Native American tribe in this area. And I'm going to tell you a condensed version of the story, but it goes like this. There was once a woman named Ulali who was an Occaneechi maiden, and she was fond of all birds and all animals, and all birds and animals were also fond of Ulali. And she was promised to marry an Occaneechi man, and they were set to be married in 1 year. So they were currently engaged. And Ulali was fine with this. She didn't love him, but she was fine with marrying him. But one day, a man named Kanadagea comes to Occaneechi village, and he's from the Tuscarora tribe, which is not part of the Occaneechi. And he meets Ulali, and they fall in love. So they decide that they should run away together the next morning. And they both agree to meet the next morning at a nearby stream where they had first fallen in love. So Ulali goes the next morning to the stream, and she goes a little early, and she finds that her fiance followed her to the stream. And her fiance says, "You've broken our vows, we're meant to be married, and you're going to run away with Kanadagea." So he kills her, and he goes back to Occaneechi village. So Kanadagea comes later and finds Ulali, and he finds that her blood has poured out of her and has poured into the nearby stream and has turned the stream this bright red color. And while all this is happening, all the birds are also coming out and trying to see what's going on because they're really fond of Ulali and really fond of Kanadagea. And one of the birds, a male cardinal who's like this brown, drab color, jumps into the stream and starts splashing around. And then when he jumps out, he's turned this bright red color. And then from then on, all male cardinals have this bright red color because this first cardinal jumped into the stream with Ulali's blood. So that is why male cardinals are red, but it doesn't end the story there with Ulali and Kanadagea. Kanadagea goes back to Occaneechi village and he kills Ulali's murderer. And he lives in Occaneechi village throughout the rest of his life into his old age, where he eventually dies of old age. But in the afterlife, him and Ulali are reunited at the stream where they still are today. So that's like a quick story and an example of how when we're learning about animals and we're learning about nature, you can go beyond just like the biological identification of all these things. There are so many rich cultural histories that you can also learn about, and that will, I think, help you remember things. Like I bet you will remember that male cardinals are red from now on. So those are some tools that we have. So we have like stories, and we also have traits that Tom talked about. And here are some other things that you can do when you're looking for birds.
So just quickly, bird books are very helpful. I know you have a lot of books and you have to lug them around, but when you're out in the field, sometimes it's helpful to have a bird book. It helps you compare, and it also has lots of information about their habits, what they're how they act, where they eat or what they eat. And it also has their ranges. So it'll have in there a little map, and it'll say, for example, the summer tanager is not here in the winter, so it's not a bird you would look for in the winter. And of course, binoculars are very helpful. And if we do go out in the field, New Hope Audubon has a bunch of pairs of binoculars that you can use. So we hope to do that soon. All right, so as Antonia alluded to, birds are sometimes hard to find, and the binoculars would help very much here. There's a little tiny bird right here, and it's called the golden crowned kinglet. So and it's high in the tree, it's high in this pine tree, and they prefer pine trees. So when looking for birds, you have to look for the movement or listen for calls, and we're going to talk about calls in a minute. But when you're looking along the river, you might want to look for other things like statues. And I have that in quotes because there's no bird statues, for example, in the Eno River, but there are birds that are so still because that's their hunting technique. They'll stand very, very still and they'll wait for a fish to come by and then they'll grab it. And we'll look at that bird in a minute. And there's other places to look for birds. You know, they'll be in hiding places. Some of them are camouflaged, so they're hard to see. So sometimes we need to look up because there might be a vulture or a hawk soaring above us. Or should we look down on the ground? Are there birds on the ground? And I think you all know the answer is yes, there are birds on the ground. So we have to, when we're out in the field, we have to be looking around. So this is a kingfisher, a belted kingfisher, and it's a common bird, a fairly common bird along the Eno River. And when the Europeans first started naming their birds, they saw that they had a bird that ate fish like this. It's not the same species, but they called it kingfisher. What's interesting is about half the kingfishers in the world don't eat fish. They're in the middle of forests and they eat lizards and snakes and frogs and whatever they can catch, but they never eat fish. The other thing interesting about this bird is this is the female. So for kingfishers, the female is the prettiest bird in this species. So she gets to attract males. And you might have heard of kookaburras. They're giant birds that live in Australia and New Guinea, and they are related to the kingfishers. So this is a great blue heron, and you can see that it's got frost on the back of, on its back. This is the statue I was talking about. Often you can see great blue herons. They're very common. They're here all year round. They're very big birds. And I took this photo in Durham in December, last December, a few months ago. And it was a very, very cold morning. I think it was like 25 degrees. Yet this bird was standing still, waiting for fish to come by in this creek. How do you think this bird can survive 25-degree temperatures with nothing but feathers and standing in very, very cold water? I'm sure the water was very cold. Does anyone know? Does anybody have any ideas? That's right. So Pladima, if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. She said they conserve body heat. So they do. They go into a little torpor, some where they shut down their body. They puff up their feathers. So this bird looks really, really big. And what puffing up the feathers means it conserves heat near its body. So it conserves body heat. That was spot on. And this is a male. He's actually starting to molt into his breeding plumage. So he has these long feathers, and he's going to try, and he's got this feather back here, which he's going to start trying to attract females to his territory. These are common birds that are here all year round. This is the tufted titmouse and the Carolina chickadee. And one of the things when you start bird watching or identifying birds, you want to learn the common birds in your area. These birds are here all year round, and they're often making a lot of noise. So you might hear them first thing in the morning. They're one of the birds that start singing first thing in the morning. So this is a mockingbird, a northern mockingbird, and it's here all year round. And one of the things it does is it calls a lot, and it mocks other birds. That's how it got its name. So the call you just heard was a mockingbird call, but it was just like what the northern cardinal sings. So to gather data on birds, we do bird surveys, we do breeding bird surveys, we go out and we do Christmas counts, so we count all the birds. So we have information to make decisions about nature and the environment. As Antonia alluded to earlier, they're a good environment, or she's going to allude to later. I'm sorry. All right. But anyway, birds are good environmental indicators. But when we're doing these surveys, we have to be careful there's not a mockingbird nearby. All right, woodpeckers, they're very interesting. They're very common here. They come to your feeders. The one on the far left is a male hairy woodpecker, and it's got a longer beak than the female downy. They look very much alike, and they're almost the same size, but it's the beak size that you tell them apart. The one on the right is a red-headed woodpecker. Woodpeckers have adaptations that other birds don't. For one, they have very stiff tail feathers, which allows them to prop themselves on the trunks of trees. Most other birds do not have these stiff tail feathers. And then the other thing woodpeckers do is they, as you've seen, they beat their heads against the wood to try to excavate bugs, or they chip off bark to excavate bugs. Well, no other bird and no other animal can do this, pound their head 30 times a minute in the same place without injuring themselves. So football helmet manufacturers are very interested in woodpeckers because they want to know how the woodpeckers can do this day in and day out and not harm their brains. And they do have a special cavity and a special way they hold their head holds their brains. All right, so we don't have to listen to this call, but this is a Carolina wren. It's a very common bird. It's here all year round. It's very loud. So it's a very tiny bird, about 4 inches long, but it's the loudest bird around. And when you hear a call, it's almost always a Carolina wren. Okay, next.
Okay, So here we have a hawk and a blue jay, and as Tom mentioned about mockingbirds, how they mimic other birds, they're not the only bird that can do that. So we're going to listen to quickly this call of the first call will be a hawk, and then the second will be a mimic of a hawk from the blue jay. And if you listen, you can tell that the hawk is a little more like screechy than the blue jay, and that's how you can tell the difference, but it's hard to tell the difference between the two. And if you think about like why would it be beneficial that a blue jay mimics a hawk, some of the reasons are that if a blue jay is coming and it mimics a hawk, then another bird will drop its food and the blue jay can come and pick up the food. So it's easier for it to find food, which is wonderful for the blue jay. And then another reason is that it's just helpful sometimes to imitate a threat. A hawk is threatening to a lot of different animals, and that can be beneficial for the blue jay. So we'll listen to it. So the first one is the hawk, and then the second one is the blue jay. So if you can tell, it's like a little less screechy. Like if you're out and about, it would be a little more stressful to hear the hawk than the blue jay. And so those are some other ways that birds mimic. And we'll go quickly through our last couple slides.
Yeah. Okay. So all year round, we have hawks. Some come in the winter and all these are here all year round. The ones on the right, the red-shouldered hawk we just talked about, and this is a red-tailed hawk. They're here all year round. They're called bootios, and their family, they soar around and they'll try to catch a rabbit or a squirrel or a snake or frog or other things. But on the left, this is the Cooper's hawk, and it's an accipiter, and it makes its living soaring through the forest quickly like a little jet fighter, and it sees a bird and it grabs a bird. So it's very maneuverable. It has a longer tail. It's got longer wings, so it's very fast. So sometimes you can identify birds by the way they hunt.
Okay, so now you maybe know about how to identify some of the birds around you. Maybe you can spot a cardinal or a blue jay out and about, but maybe you're wondering, like, what's the importance of birding? And Tom talked a little bit about this, but birds are environmental indicators. And that means that an environmental indicator is a species or organism that the health of that organism indicates what's going on in the nearby environment. So an example could be like a frog. So frogs breathe through their skin. So if there are frogs in the water and there's pollutants in the water, that could really affect frog populations. So if you're looking at frog populations and they start to decline, that might tell you, you might think, oh, maybe something's going on in the water. Maybe there are pollutants going on that's making it difficult for frogs to survive. And that's the same with birds. Birds are really connected to their habitat and their environment. So if bird populations start to decline, that might tell you, oh, there's air quality issues, or there's something going on with habitat destruction. So monitoring bird populations tells you about what's going on in the environment. So if you don't know that bird populations are declining, then maybe you don't know that something's going on in the habitat, that there's like trees being cut down. So it's important to monitor from like a biological perspective, but then from just like an individual perspective, going bird watching can be a really meditative and calming practice. You can practice using all of your senses and finding what's around you, and it can allow you to be more present when you're outside and in the moment there. So it's really beneficial for a lot of different things. So I know we kind of sped through some of these things, but we want to thank you for having us and see if you have any questions. I can't see the chat, so I don't know.
I can help with the chat if anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, I can read them.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and we can go back and talk more in depth about things too. I don't know if we have additional time, but yeah.
I mean, let's take 2 to 3 minutes for any questions that you all have. But Antonia and Tom, this was amazing. I mean, it's so wonderful to see all the birds, to be able to tell the differences. Like I love the question of like, the red bird, just because of the color doesn't mean that, it's automatically a cardinal, right? And it's like there are features that we definitely talked about. And then the cultural stories, I don't think any of us will forget, how the cardinal got its red, Okay, so I do see a question. Can you do bird watching anywhere, or is it just in North Carolina? Are the ones that we talked about?
So you can bird watch anywhere in your backyard. A lot of those photos that I took that we showed were from my backyard. So we live in a very diverse, great area where there's a lot of parks. So you don't have to go to a park, but we have a lot of parks in Durham and in Durham County, like the Eno River State Park. It's not very far. Hopefully it'll be easy to get to. There's several parks along the Eno River, but there's Sandy Creek Park. There's plenty of parks, but even in your backyard, anywhere in North Carolina, anywhere in the United States, anywhere in the world, you can bird watch.
It's wonderful. I mean, it is definitely one of the coolest things that we do have so many opportunities to do this in at the Eno, as Tom mentioned, and in your backyards. And tell us about the bird watching trips where you can have binoculars. Can you tell us about how to go about doing that, and how to, is it like, do you have to sign up for a tour and then they lend you a binocular, or how does that work?
So Alexandra, we have bird walks. New Hope Audubon Society leads bird walks, although we've stopped them during the pandemic, but I am leading bird walks for the Eno River Association. And I do that once a month. But for you and your group, I would do a special bird walk, and I would bring binoculars, and we would meet somewhere along the Eno River, and we might even invite Antonia. And no, of course we would. And what I couldn't do is do like 30 or 40 people. It would have to be like 10 at the max, and only because of the pandemic. But when we get a lot more people vaccinated, we're going to have regular walks. But for your group, I would set up something in April or May, and we would go out on a Saturday morning, for example, and we'd see what we could see.
That's wonderful. This is one of the neat things that we have the Eno River Association. We have the New Hope Audubon Society providing these opportunities for all of us. So just want to thank you so much for everything that you have brought to us today. All those wonderful birds, and even mockingbirds. Like I got to to see them up close, so up close, and to talk about them. So everyone, let's give them thanks.